welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. In just a moment, I'm going to walk my happy butt over to the futon to check out the VOD film Hemet, or The Landlady Don't Drink Tea. This film is directed by Tony Olmos, and it tells the story of a group of people living in an apartment building or apartment complex where the landlady will not let them leave during a zombie apocalypse. She's keeping them all contained there for their own safety, or so she can control them. One or the other. We'll see how this film goes. This movie is a horror satire comedy, and it was sent to me over online. I was sent a screener, and I am always honored to get those. I really appreciate when filmmakers send me films for me to check out. I'm just absolutely honored, to be perfectly honest, whenever that happens. I mean, what does my opinion matter, to be perfectly honest? But I love the fact that you guys send me your films to check out and talk about and do reviews on and all. So thank you again for sending this film. But you know what? It's enough of me jibber jabbering on. As always, my good old cat Haku is patiently waiting for me over there, because if there's one thing I've said before, it's that my cat loves a good horror movie, especially a horror comedy. So let's head on over to the futon, folks, because it's time to check out Hemet, or The Landlady Don't Drink Tea. Just getting done watching Hemet, or The Landlady Don't Drink Tea. And I'm not going to tell you what she does drink, because that lady is nasty. So let's get this started, shall we? Now, before I dive into the review, I want to clarify something. In my review, I made a mistake. I said this film was going to be on VOD services. Now, it's not going to be on VOD services. It's going to be on AVOD services. So what is the difference? A traditional VOD service would be something like Amazon Prime, Google Movies, Fandango, a service that you would either rent the film or purchase the film. However, an AVOD streaming service is something like Pluto, Tubi TV, or YouTube. You just have to watch a few ads in order to watch this film. So I wanted to clarify that. This movie is going to be released January 27th on AVOD streaming services. So let's get this started, shall we? We're going to get things started with negatives, then move into the positives to end the video on the ever so important high note. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is the overabundance of characters in this movie. Now, normally I would say that's not such a bad thing, but unfortunately for this type of a film, the characters themselves come out a little undercooked. None of the characters in this movie, save for the landlady herself, really feels fully developed or given a full characterization. They're all just kind of quirks of people that might be in a rental situation. And I think that if the film would have limited itself to a smaller cast, we would have been able to see a bit more characterization from the characters. Also, this film, it tries to satire a little too much. Now, I know everything in this movie, the events that it's satiring, were all pretty much happening at the same time during the 2020 pandemic. We had COVID-19, we had the good old police incompetence, which honestly leads to what I thought was one of the funniest freaking moments in this entire film. The movie also tries to take on all of the problems that tenants and landlords were having during the pandemic. And I think with its limited budget, it unfortunately does not deliver on the messages in a coherent manner as good as it possibly could. It's not a terrible thing. It's just that I feel like if the movie would have just latched on to one thing that was happening during that time, it would have been able to flesh out the events a lot better and really be able to put its foot down on what it's trying to say about what its feelings are. What was the film trying to prove by using this satire? Was it just for comedic element, or was this movie trying to use it as some kind of metaphor? And unfortunately, because of the limited budget, this film takes on a lot of topics, but it doesn't fully latch onto a topic. The other thing, too, is This is more of a mix because I'm going to get to where I think this works. Now, this movie's dialogue seems to be a little off. I do believe that the writer of this film, Brian Patrick Butler, who also played Liz, the landlady, so we'll get to that. I think that he was trying to create a dialogue that was slightly unworldly, something that you wouldn't hear. It would fit into something like a film like Juno or something like that. But unfortunately, it doesn't quite work in all areas. It's not god awful. It just has a tendency to stand out. I think basically what I think was going on here was this film is very B movie. It's got a very B movie horror vibe to it. And that is another one of the layers of satire that this film is trying to do. It's trying to lambast the so good it's bad style of filming. Now, it does exceed in certain areas, but in others, where like in this dialogue like I'm talking about, it just seemed to be a little out of place in some areas, and it can become a little distracting in some moments. But other than that, I still think that the script itself was a very well put together script. Now, the makeup in this film, and this is something that I think that they did a good job on, but at the same time, I could see where people would have their complaints. The old lady makeup in this film, it's just weird. Like, it is not well done whatsoever, and I think that was by design. This film, she's on screen a lot. Our landlady is on screen a lot, and I think with keeping on a small budget and all, they had two choices: spend an ass ton of budget on a mask that looks really good, or blanket the budget out over the film so they could do some other things and make the makeup look super campy so it can keep with the entire satire vibe of a so bad it's good horror film. And they did a really good job with it, but unfortunately, I think if people are not familiar with films like that, they're not going to quite get the joke, and they're going to think that the makeup looks, cheap and out of place. But I'm trying to say here is I truly feel like that was by design so that it would just make the character look even that much more creepy, because honestly, I think that it really succeeds. So let's move into the positives. Now, the makeup, like I said, it is pretty good if it's what you realize what they're trying to do, because there are some practical effects in this movie that are handled quite well. There's a whole scene where someone gets a face ripped off, and it looked fairly good. In fact, come to think of it, this is the second movie in the last couple of days that I've watched where someone gets their face ripped off. What the hell is that about? This movie is also funny. I mentioned the cop scene. There's a scene that I was belly laughing throughout the entire scene in this film. I couldn't stop laughing. There are another good jokes that do land. Not all of those jokes land really well, but a lot of them do hit pretty good and bring out some chuckles in you. The performances across the board aren't half bad with the limited characterizations that the tenants have. All of the performances are fairly solid for what they had to work with. But if I had to say one person is standout, and that is Brian Patrick Butler as the landlady, Liz. He knocks it out of the ballpark for playing this just strange, creepy, weird character that he developed for the landlady. Not only is she silly and weird, but she's also vicious, cunning, and downright evil. And it's probably the best character in the entire film, so you can definitely see where the focus was put on. And it's probably why the movie is named such as it is, because Hemet is barely brought up, but the landlady's there constantly. All in all, guys, I would have to say that this was a fun film, that it is a good watch. It's on streaming services that are free to view except for a few commercials. So in all honesty, guys, this movie is under an hour and a half. It's like an hour and 25 minutes. So basically an hour and 20 minutes of your day to check out a fun little indie film that doesn't quite hit everything, but what it does hit right, it gets quite right. Well, that's all I have for you today, guys. Thanks again for checking out The Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.